Spellbound came out in 1945 and is directed by the master of suspense Alfred Hitchcock. It stars Ingrid Bergman, one of the greatest actresses of all time, and Gregory Peck, who would go on to be one of the leading men in American cinema. Is it one of Hitchcock's more overrated films, or is it a classic of the genre and ahead of its time? We'll get into it on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Yes, we are covering 40s Hitchcock once again, but for the last time in a little while, we've got that Euros fever, and when I say we, I of course mean my co-host, not guest host, the returning Shane Mulvaney.
Hello everyone, good to be back.
And yes, as I said, we got that Euros fever. For the next 4 weeks after this, we are going to be covering all 4 semi-finalists in the classic film Euros. We have no idea what those films are going to be because the round of 16 is still taking place as of recording this. Any predictions, Shane? Who do you reckon makes the semis, and who do you reckon are the 4 films that we cover on the podcast?
I have a feeling Pochine might make the last 4 just because we have a lot of Irish followers and people might have that Irish kind of spirit in them. It's looking like the Seventh Seal might be one that sneaks into the final 4. I say sneaks, it's an Ingrid Bergman film. I don't know if a Bergman film ever sneaks in anywhere, but that'd be a great one to cover on the podcast as well. And maybe Bicycle Thieves is another one that I think will be in there. That's a great film. Be good to rewatch. That's one of the first films we saw together in college. And who knows for that last spot? I mean, it could be none of those 3. It could be only 1 or 2. But I have a feeling those 3 could be 3 that sneak in.
Yeah, there's been some tough competition and some absolute hammerings in the classic film Euros. Want to get involved? Well, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is go to our Instagram or our YouTube channel, and you can vote on each match as they happen. They happen every day throughout the Euros until a winner is crowned. In the meantime, Shane, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Harry. Thanks for holding on the fort last week. Last minute thing that came up, so wasn't able to record on the day, unfortunately. But Harry did a great job covering Lifeboat, which I think he was a bit more magnanimous towards the film than I would have been. I didn't like it as much as Harry, let's put it that way. But he did a great job in the episode, so let's crack on with Spellbound today.
Thank you. And also, we are going to do a little spoiler-free review of the film. Something we'll do very shortly for every episode going forward, because we have come to the conclusion that, hey, not everybody who listens to the podcast has seen every single one of these films that we are covering. So we're going to do a little spoiler-free review first, and you can gauge off of our opinions whether or not you want to watch the film or just listen ahead. Shane, thoughts on Spellbound?
So for the first half an hour of this, I was really enjoying it. I thought Ingrid Bergman's performance was really good. I like the kind of psychological thriller element that they were bringing in, and when Gregory Peck comes on, it adds another layer. But at some point, the film just loses me. We'll talk about why in the spoiler section of the podcast. It's coming up later, but yeah, I think it doesn't really fulfill its full promise. But that being said, I think it's worth the watch. I wasn't disappointed in that I watched it. I don't think it's not worthy of a watch. It's just one of Hitchcock's lesser works, I think. Even though, and we'll talk about it, but even though it was nominated for several Academy Awards.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. It's my second time seeing Spellbound, and the first time I just couldn't understand why I wasn't that into it. I just zoned out. From when the film moves on from the mental health hospital that it's set in the beginning, I just sort of lose any sort of interest in the film until the famous Salvador Dali dream sequence, which hooked me right back in for the ending. And without spoiling it, I thought the ending was rather silly and ham-fisted. But I do think it's one of Hitchcock's better romances. You could argue that that's more down to the performances, but there's a lot of good cinematography in there, and there's a lot of good direction in there. Of course, it's the same cinematographer as Rebecca. Fun fact, he was married 7 times. And I think he does a good job in the film, but as I said, there's a fairly boring middle part of this film, which we'll get into, which really does just kind of lose any interest that I had. About the film, it as Shane said, was nominated for a couple of Academy Awards. Was nominated for 6 in total: Best Director, Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, Best Cinematography, Best Original Score, and Best Visual Effects. It won 1, which was for Best Original Score, which I think is fair enough. It's a very good score.
Just on that score as
And
well. The score is by Miklos Rosa, and apparently his score here inspired the work of legendary composer Jerry Goldsmith. Jerry Goldsmith saw this film, was blown away by the score and what Miklos Rosa did with the score, and that ended up inspiring him into his acclaimed career as a film composer. So that's one kind of legacy that this film has, maybe, if you want to call it that.
yeah, the film was also a major box office success. For the time, it made something like 4 times its budget back at the box office in the United States alone. So it was a big success for Hitchcock and David O. Selznick. Yes, guess who's back? Back again. O. Selznick's back. Tell your friends. Yes, we haven't had O. Selznick co-sign a film since Rebecca. It is their second time working together. Hitchcock was, whilst we were talking about all these other films, Hitchcock was under contract to Selznick, but this is just the second time that the two of them have actually worked together, and they didn't get on.
No.
One bit.
No.
Not at all.
Apparently, Selznick was the guy who persuaded Hitchcock to buy the rights of the novel, or at least adapt the novel that the film is based on. So yeah, the early kind of career, they had high hopes for the work for each other. We saw that with a Best Picture win as well for Rebecca, another adaptation from a novel. But yeah, they quickly kind of figured out that they weren't on each other's wavelength when it came to, well, various aspects of the filmmaking kind of model. So yeah, they weren't each other's favourite people, it's fair to say.
Yeah, there was a bunch of issues, typical issues between the two. Joseph Cotton seems to get mentioned on every episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
Selznick wanted him to play Gregory Peck's role. Hitchcock wanted him to play Leo G. Carroll's role. Ultimately, he played no roles and was not in the film. Also, David O. Selznick's therapist was on set and was there to provide analysis. Hitchcock did not get on very well with them. The dream sequence, which for me at least is, other than maybe the score, by far the best part of the film, was cut from 20 minutes to 2 minutes, according to Ingrid Bergman. Allegedly, it went way crazier. There was way more involved. Salvador Dali, who did it all, like the main surrealist at the time, had all these grand ideas. There's one, allegedly, he wanted Ingrid Bergman's character to like turn into a statue, and then the statue would crumble and a load of ants would come out of the statue. That would have been a cool visual, but no, it was all cut. Selznick actually cut a load of things because of censorship issues. There's a character in it who is only in one scene, who was meant to be a prominent lead character in the film. That was Mrs. Carmichael, who's in the opening scene. She was meant to be in way more of the film, but was cut more or less entirely. And yeah, Hitchcock and O. Selznick just did not get along one bit.
Yeah, coming back to the work with Salvador Dali, Hitchcock was a big admirer of his work, thinking that no one kind of understood the effects that great images could have. So that's the reason why Dali was brought on to provide some visual kind of flourishes in that dream sequence. Selznick was actually against bringing on Dali apparently, but because of the money that would involve. But then once he realised that he could market the shit out of having the great Salvador Dali, he quickly changed his tune. So that's kind of what you would expect producers to do as soon as they hear that he might make a buck. Yeah, their approach will change, you could say. And apparently Gregory Peck said that Hitchcock wasn't massively enthused by his facial expressions and his acting basically in some of his film. Peck was more of like an internal kind of actor, he always said about himself. Basically approached it from the inside out, and he said that Hitchcock wrote a lot of scenes basically with the image already in mind. So he just wanted Peck. He wanted basically people to look at Peck's face and know exactly what he's thinking at all times. And that's not really the way Peck loved to work. Peck like to be a bit more subtle maybe in some of his facial expressions. So, but he does kind of blame himself. Peck, he wasn't saying that Hitchcock was wrong for that, and they did go on to work again with each other a few years later on the parodying case. So, no, it's not something that would affect their relationship kind of long term, if you want to call it that. And Ben Hecht consulted, screenwriter Ben Hecht, who wrote the screenplay, he consulted many of the leading psychoanalysts of the day to kind of try and gain an accurate portrayal, an accurate interpretation of the kind of work that they did in order to have a truthful interpretation on the screen. So whether that ended up being a good thing or not, whether that ended up kind of translating well to screen, that's up to the individual, I suppose. But I wasn't massively blown away by some of the portrayals of the psychoanalysts in this, if you want to call it that. And one little salacious thing, perhaps, it's been speculated that Gregory Peck implied in a 1987 interview that he had an affair with Ingrid Bergman during the production. People are saying that he just said that as a joke, other people are saying that it is true, but I don't know. But it's just another little thing, maybe. Two big stars, did they or did they not have an affair on Hitchcock film? It's a fun little thing to maybe talk about, especially when you talk about maybe the chemistry that they had in the film. So yeah, who knows? That could be something.
And yeah, I reckon we just get straight into the film. So straight away with the credits, we get the score, and it's great. It's brilliant. We also have the quote from Shakespeare: "The fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves." And then we get some more text, because who doesn't love text? And it's a big old text scroll, long story short, saying the film is about psychoanalysis and about these psychoanalysts getting into people's minds and unlocking doors that opens the consciousness so that the inner demons can escape. Yeah, first scene is Mrs. Carmichael, who, as I said, was supposed to be a far more prominent character in the film. She is summoned by Dr. Peterson, played by Ingrid Bergman, to her office, and she tries to seduce the nurse on the way there. His name's Harry. Let's go. She tries to seduce him, and she scrapes his hand, and that kind of startles him, so he just ushers her into Peterson's office, and he's kind of like, she's your problem now, Dr. Peterson. They have a bit of a back and forth where basically they just explain why Hitchcock is so fascinated by psychoanalysis. Straight away, first scene in the film. Peterson is like, well, we do psychoanalysis because once we get you to realize where the trauma comes from, then the mental illness that this person has will suddenly just evaporate.
Yeah.
And because this is the 40s that we're talking about. And Carmichael is like, no, you just do psychoanalysis because you want people to tell you about how bad they are so that you can feel better about yourself. Then Carmichael tells a story about how she bit a guy's nose off. So, no, I don't think it's the inner turmoil that you have that makes Dr. Peterson feel like a more sociable member of society to you. I think it's the fact that she doesn't go around biting people's noses off, Miss Carmichael. I think she was meant to be like a very visceral, violent character throughout the film. But this is the last we actually see of her. That's the end of Mrs. Carmichael, because she is taken out of the room by Harry as Dr. Fleurot enters, the incredibly not charming, sleazy, sexist Fleurot. It was kind of like if this was a high school film, he's like the lead bully of the psychoanalysts, and he fancies Bergman's character.
He's the
and
Regina
basically they
George.
just repeat what he says.
He's the Regina George of the psychoanalysts at this mental hospital.
He is the Regina George of psychoanalysis, because basically he just keeps pushing himself on Peterson. She keeps rejecting him. He keeps saying, oh, well, I didn't like you anyway. And every time he goes back to his little squabble of psychoanalysts, they all just kind of repeat the same jokes as him and think he's the bee's knees. Probably because he got published more times than them or something. That's normally what it boils down to in these films. Basically, the purpose of him coming into the office is to serve as a way of letting the audience know that Mrs. Peterson or Dr. Peterson has no interest in any of these men, which therefore means that she she can't. She's not a real woman. She doesn't have womanhood because she doesn't fancy any of these weird, creepy old psychoanalysts. Maybe it's just
Double her
because she
age.
spent so much time with these freaky psychoanalysts who keep trying to outsmart her, and they just hang around her, and they all think that Fleurot's the coolest guy in the world. Maybe if she just spent some time with a quality guy, maybe she would be fine. Maybe it's not that big a deal. If I had to spend all my time with a bunch of people like this, I would probably shut myself off from everyone else in the world too.
Also, it's
They're
Yeah. Also, it's Ingrid
yeah,
Bergman. Like, she can do what the hell she wants, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, literally. So actually, Fleurot, I think she's a perfectly fine woman, and if she is gonna reject you and all your mates, that's more a reflection on you and your freaky, stupid, know-it-all mates who just repeat your jokes. I actually don't like you one bit, Fleurot. I realize he is like a villain in this film, so good acting, but I don't like you. Oh, and then of course, Dr. Murchison
Yeah.
enters, who is played by Leo G. Carroll. Sound the Leo G. Carroll
The
alarm.
third,
He's back on
the
the
third of
podcast.
6 collaborations that Leo G. Carroll had with Alfred Hitchcock. He went to the Leo
He
G.
had
Carroll
some
well.
dodgy photos of Hitchcock. He had some dodgy photos of Hitchcock, I can
Yeah.
tell you that much.
Very good performance, though.
Yeah, Leo G. Carroll. Yeah, oh yeah, probably his
Yeah.
best in a
His most
Hitchcock
prominent,
film. The only
definitely.
other
Yeah.
notable one, yeah, the only other notable one I can think of is Strangers on a Train.
Yeah,
He's all
that's
right
true.
in that. The rest of them, he is more of a
Yeah.
background character. Basically, he's like the chief psychoanalyst. He comes in, and Fleurot leaves. He comes in and he's like, I'm retiring, or at least I'm leaving this place. I'm moving on to greener pastures. Peterson lets the audience know basically the reason this is probably happening is because he actually had like a psychotic breakdown a while ago and then was sent on holidays. He has since returned from his holidays, and they all reckon that he's in much better form since, but they just want to move him on. He's an older gentleman as well, or at least I don't know. It's the 40s. They all look old. Uh, he's an older gentleman as well, so they want to bring in a fresh, young face, according to him. So there's a Dr. Edwards who is going to be replacing him.
Yeah, so Mr. Garms arrives. Says that he's feeling better, so he's basically giving props and he's giving credit to Dr. Peterson for helping him kind of feel better. They look out the window and then it turns out that Edwards has arrived. This is Gregory Peck, played the lead actor. He arrives, so he greets the other doctors and they come inside, and Pearson says that she wishes to learn from Edwards, but it's pretty clear that she's already kind of instantly taken by this person for whatever reason. So as they're talking at dinner, Constance kind of draws like a pool or something with like a fork on the table, and this pattern and this like the color white and the pattern that she draws, for whatever reason, seems to freak the hell out of Dr. Edwards. Yeah, he just instantly doesn't know what the hell's going on here, and it kind of the switch goes off, and yeah, he's completely a different person at that point. So she's automatically kind of wondering what the hell's going on here.
Yeah, so after the dinner sequence, Dr. Edwards summons Dr. Peterson to his office, and uh, as she's coming in, we see Garms is back in the office again. He admits to being the person who killed his father to Dr. Edwards. We're kind of coming in towards the end of this conversation, and when Peterson comes in, she says, no, Garms, you actually didn't kill your father. This is just this bad dream that you've been having where you keep waking up and thinking that you are guilty for killing your father. You didn't kill your father. Whereas Edwards is more like, but he just told me that. So all of a sudden, this great new young upstart chief of psychoanalysis who's just believing the patient straight away is maybe not as good at his job as he said on his CV. Garms is sent on his way, and Edward says, I have a really bad headache. I think I'm going to take the afternoon off. Do you reckon you could maybe spend your afternoon with me? After this, he actually gets a phone call, and it's a woman called Mrs. Kramer. He says, no, this is Dr. Edwards. I have no idea who you are. He puts the phone down. He says to Peterson. I don't know what that was about. That was bizarre. I don't like practical jokes. He's he's a funny character, is Dr. Edwards. There's clearly something not all right about him. Peterson is okay, and she's like, "Do you know what? I will. I'll go for a walk with you. Why not?" So he's definitely a bit of an elusive character. She wants to get to know him a bit more. You could tell over dinner she was somewhat fascinated by him, and she just kind of wants to pick his brain because obviously he's a very acclaimed author, is this Dr. Edwards, and yet on the surface he doesn't seem to know an awful lot about psychoanalysis. They
She's
go for this
also
walk.
sorry,
Sorry,
she's
go for it.
also apparently read the book that he's become famous
Yeah.
for as well on psychoanalysis. So that's another reason why she's drawn to him. She's fascinated by him. So yeah, it's more than one reason, let's say, as to why she wants to learn more about this guy.
Yeah, and they go on this walk, they have a nice time. They actually talk about love, and Peterson tries to scientifically break down why love is the way it is and how it happens, and she's clearly a more reason driven person, whereas Edwards is like, what, sometimes love just happens and you can't scientifically explain it. Sometimes you just get that sensation, which is a funny conversation they have, which will kind of play into the narrative later on. Because when she returns, of course, Floro and the lads all slag her for going on a walk with the tall, young, handsome chief of psychoanalysis, Gregory Peck's Dr. Edwards, instead of, I don't know, kissing Floro when he tried it on with her for the 700th time in the workplace. And also, Garms has had an incident again.
Yeah, so in bed, Constance can't sleep, and she puts a dressing robe on. She ties her hair, and she starts to think. So we automatically know that she must be thinking about Edwards basically. She leaves her room and she goes to the library. She takes out a book called Labyrinth of the Guilt Complex, which is the book that Dr. Edwards has written, that she's already read, and that she's basically, that's how she knows Dr. Edwards before she even met him. She hovers outside his room as well. She goes outside his room, so she starts acting like a bit of a crazy stalker at this point, in a way. Um, so she opens the door to his room. She starts to creep in, and we see that he's kind of falling asleep on a chair. But then he kind of slowly opens his eyes and he smiles. So there's that like instant attraction we can tell between the two of them. Um, she admits that she's nervous, and she calls herself a distracted child. So she knows that kind of this is out of character for her. She doesn't usually behave like this, but there's something kind of that's drawn her to Dr. Edwards for whatever reason. Edwards acknowledges the mutual attraction that they share, and he says it happens in a moment sometimes. So then they kiss passionately. Pretty good, like kind of way. Sometimes the romances don't instantly click in a Hitchcock film. This is one where it works a bit better than usual. Like I think Harry mentioned on the last Hitchcock episode we did with maybe Shadow of a Doubt, that like Hitchcock since Rebecca, there was basically no successful romance arcs. This is one that gets off on a better footing than the other 40 Hitchcock films, apart from Rebecca, I would say at least. So I'm not saying it's blew me away, and I'm not saying it was completely successful, but definitely you could feel from the start anyway, it felt like a bit more of a believable kind of connection that they had, maybe, if you want to call it that, to use a Love Island term. Yeah, so after they kissed then, he's startled about something on her robe, so it kind of reminds him of the pattern from earlier in the night, or maybe the previous day at dinner, and then he kind of gets freaked out again for whatever reason. It's a similar kind of pattern and it's a similar colour that freaked him out, so we know there's something going on with this dude, something like that freaks him out. So he receives an urgent call, and turns out that Garms tried to murder Fluro, and then he slit his own throat. So he's in critical
Who
condition in the
wouldn't?
hospital. Yeah, exactly. Can't really blame him. Fluro's a dick.
Yeah. No, I'm cheering Garms on there.
So in surgery, then Edwards orders the light be turned on and the doors unlocked. Again, this just kind of shows to the audience that this dude, there's something going on with this dude, because a lead psychiatrist or a lead kind of psychoanalyst in surgery would not do this at all. It'd be the opposite of what they would do. So for whatever reason, yeah, he's acting completely out of character than what you would expect someone in his position to do. He believes that Garms did kill his father, and then he collapses, and Constance tells the others that she'll take care of him. So, yeah, back in the room, then Constance watches Edwards, but when she's comparing the autograph that she has on the book, as compared to a letter that she found with Dr. Edwards, she realizes they're not the same autograph. So, yeah, she kind of quickly deduces that this isn't Dr. Edwards after all. All these kind of moments of weirdness, all these kind of moments of kind of what the hell is this dude doing? They have added up in her mind, and yeah, they're not just outliers. They existed for a reason, and yeah, he was acting shifty all along, or he was acting like a bit weird all along, and that's why he turns out he's not Dr. Edwards after all.
Yeah, and he admits that he killed the real Dr. Edwards. He says to Peterson, "Yep, you got me. I killed Dr. Edwards. I'm not Dr. Edwards, but I also have no idea who I actually am." He's an amnesiac. He has no memory of anything. All he remembers in his head is that he killed Dr. Edwards. And Peterson, for pretty much the rest of the film, is like, "Nah, I don't think you did.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's 1940s Gregory Peck. I mean, what woman's not gonna fall for him?" But she's like, "Nah, I actually don't think you did. Yeah, sure, you came here with your one suitcase and you pretended to be a different guy, and that guy's nowhere to be seen, and you've been having a few episodes now, but no, I don't reckon you did kill him." So thankfully she does do that, because now we get a plot, and now the plot starts rolling.
Yeah, this is also where
Slowly.
I would say
It starts rolling slowly.
this is also where usually when a plot kicks in, usually the stakes kind of, well, let's say the stakes don't get higher, because they do, but usually you kind of enjoy a film more once the plot starts to get rolling. This probably moment right now is probably for me where I start to kind of lose interest in a way. Maybe a little bit later on, but I mean, I was kind of enjoying it. I was really enjoying it up to this point. I could kind of tell if there's some usual Hitchcock things where he's just planting little seeds that keep you hooked, that get you on a little hook. But once this kind of moment, after this moment, I should say.
So repetitive.
I think it does.
It's just the same stuff happening over and over again. In my notes, I've actually purposely skipped a couple of bits that had already happened in the film. So with whatever I say, at least anyway, it might not even seem as repetitive, but that's just because there's a good 30 to 40 minute middle part of this film where I just kept zoning out, and I just
could have been 10
other
minutes long,
things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, from here, we have the big reveal that this guy has murdered the real Dr. Edwards, and Peterson's like, "Oh, it's okay, I'm gonna help you remember what happened." And somehow it gets boring.
Yeah, exactly. This should be the moment where it kicks in and the stakes escalate, which they do, but also where the viewer starts to get more and more hooked, and they want to know what the hell the story really is with this guy. This is his Jason Bourne kind of arc. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know where he came from. Yeah. Unfortunately, unlike the Bourne Identity, this doesn't. The stakes don't become more dramatic, and they don't become more satisfying, I should say. So anyway, Constance promises him that she'll kind of help him to remember his name. Edwards realizes that the woman who called him on the phone was Edwards' actual assistant. And he also found a packet of cigarettes with JB kind of written on them. So Peterson kind of deduces that must be your initials, JB. These must be something to do with your real name. Your first name must be J and your surname must be B.
And yeah, she basically says, "Right, tomorrow I'm going to really psychoanalyze you. We'll really try and get to the bottom of this problem, but I'm off to bed." So she goes to bed, and he writes a letter saying, "I'm out of here." And he slips it under her door, basically saying, "See you later. I'm not putting you under any of this stress. You've got a career and stuff. I'm off to the Empire State Hotel in New York." Which,
Yeah.
you know, if he didn't want her to follow her, why would he say where he was going?
Exactly.
Because the plot has to keep moving. So the next day, she wakes up. She doesn't notice the letter just yet because Kramer, the assistant, has shown up to tell everybody that fella is not Edwards. I haven't seen Edwards in days. The guy I spoke to over the phone is not Edwards. There's a man pretending to be Edwards. So what do? They go straight on up to Peterson's room, where thankfully just as they're coming up, she spots the letter in the doorway. She picks it up as they walk in. She hides it behind her back. They question her, and she's like, I have no idea what's going on. They're like, oh, your mate pretended to be Edwards. He's gone missing. Where is he? She's like, I have no idea. They're saying, well, you're awful calm for someone who's just gone on a walk yesterday with a fella who's gone missing today, who may or may not have murdered someone. You're pretty calm receiving this news. She's like, no, I genuinely had no idea. I'm just in shock. She opens the letter. She reads it. She knows where to go.
Yeah, Fleuro believes that JB, whoever he is, not Dr. Edwards, obviously, no. Fleuro believes that JB will commit suicide since the police are after him. He thinks that that's kind of the most logical thing, that someone on the run who doesn't know who they are, who has probably killed a person, he believes that that's the most logical thing that they will do. And obviously Constance is disturbed by this because she's built a connection. She's built a kind of affinity for this person, JB. So yeah, she immediately kind of sets off to try and find him so that he doesn't do something stupid like that.
And I should have mentioned as well, literally just immediately before they go into the room, somehow Dr. Murchison basically explains the entire narrative and plot of the film beat for beat, and he knows exactly what's happening with every single character involved and what all of their motives are.
Yeah.
At the time, I did think, that's just bad storytelling. How is this guy just explained the entire plot in one go? Now, obviously, I've watched it twice, so I know now. But at on my first watch, I was like, this is just stupid. How has this guy solved everything?
He's a smart
We're
guy.
only like half an hour in.
He's a lead doctor in a psychoanalysis unit, you know? He's a smart dude.
Was.
Okay, well, was.
He's past his peak. He's past his peak.
He's been removed from his position.
They leave her room. She kind of has some time to herself, and it is announced over the radio that a madman is on the loose. An unnamed madman who escaped from a mental asylum is on the loose, and we reckon he's in Manhattan. So, yeah, she's off to Manhattan to go to the Empire State Hotel.
Yeah, for some reason there's an extended scene of Constance getting sexually harassed by a dude. She kind of waits in the lobby of the Empire State Hotel. This thing goes on for so long. It just keeps... And he comes back. He comes back as well. He gets thrown away by like a porter in the hotel or whatever he is, or a security guard. I'm not sure.
It was the house detective. The house
detective comes over and he helps Constance, and then he goes off to find some information for her. And the dude comes back and then he keeps sexually harassing her. It was so uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah, I don't know what the purpose of it was. Was it meant to prove that she's smarter than the average man on the streets, or was it meant to be like some sick comedy? I don't know.
I think it was meant to be comedic.
It was so long and drawn out and just uncomfortable and gross. But this house detective manages to do some detective work and finds a load of people who checked in the last day with one bag, who were tall and handsome. JB. And she deducts that through his handwriting, and more importantly, his pseudonym is also initialed JB. John Brown is obviously Gregory Peck's character. JB, we'll call him for now. She thanks the house detective. She goes up to him. And again, with the repetitiveness, basically just the same scene that happens about 6 times in the film, where she says, "Let me psychoanalyze you. I can fix you. Haha." Yeah. And he's like, "No, I'm too fucked up. You can't help me. I might kill you." That scene happens in like 6 different bedrooms throughout the film.
The only thing that we find out extra in this is that he is a doctor of some kind. So like you said, it's at this point she's probably tried to psychoanalyze him at least a couple of times before this, with little or no success, which kind of calls into question how good she is, really. But At least this time she figures out that he's a doctor. So that will maybe help them figure out a little bit more information going forward. But I mean, it's like a 10-minute scene, and that's all we find out. That's the only thing that progresses the plot forward up until there's a knock on the door, and the bell porter, or you want to call him a porter in a hotel,
Yeah.
maybe, if you want to call him that. She talks to him, but then he looks at the newspaper and he sees her photograph, and turns out there's an article in the paper which says that she's on the run with JB and she's wanted as well. So yeah, she realizes that he's clocked on, and they have to escape. But up until that knock on the door and with the porter, it's like a 10-minute scene, and it's the only thing that we find out that advances the plot. I mean, interminable.
Yeah, there's that one line of dialogue in that 10-minute scene where she said it has nothing to do with love, nothing. Where no, we get it. She's falling in love, but she's a woman of science, so she thinks that love and science are two different things because everything needs an explanation, and she's questioning her faith and her beliefs in science. But come on, man. That does not need to be 10 minutes. Not at all. So basically, they go on the run. And by on the run, I mean they slowly walk around
a train station.
Scenes with no tension whatsoever.
They don't disguise themselves.
No, they get to a train station, and it's clearly meant to be a Hitchcock suspense scene in the queue to buy tickets, where she's like, I'm going to just put you under so much pressure, and you're going to remember where you were from, and then you're just going to remember it straight away, and we're going to buy tickets to that place. They draw so much attention to themselves because JB, basically, his whole superpower is he faints all the time, quite like myself. And he gets to the top of the queue, and he gets so stressed, and he goes, Rome, and then faints, which draws a lot of attention to them. The guy's like, Rome? And she's like, he means Rome, Georgia. Like, Rome in Georgia. Give me 2 tickets to there, please. Yeah. The police officer comes over and is like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, he's fine. Whilst he's flopping all over her, and he's clearly borderline unconscious. He comes to his senses a bit, and she's like, right, we're going to pretend to get on the Rome train, but we've drawn enough attention to ourselves. We're going to go to Rochester instead. And he's like, right, okay. And then in the queue for the Rochester train, they manage to draw even more attention to themselves because all these couples are having their big last goodbye kiss. So they do it too, even though they're both going together. So they're clearly two people who just don't really know how to function in society because they have their big last goodbye kiss, and then
they just go with the tickets
is like, oh, you're both going? And they're like, yeah. So they are clearly two people who, for a psychoanalyst and Gregory Peck, they don't seem to know how people behave in society. So they get on the train, and the ticket guys I swear he even looks down the camera. They draw that much attention to themselves. Yeah. So there's no tension here. It's just them not being very good at being subtle, and then people noticing this, and then nothing happening.
I have a note here that says, for some reason, the train conductor is confused when they present their tickets. Because at this point, I'm like, why is the train conductor even clocking onto the fact? You've explained it perfectly. They're acting so ridiculously that there is no explanation. That of course he would be like, what the fuck is going on with these two?
Yeah. They do this big dramatic last goodbye kiss, which everyone else is doing, and then get on the train together. So he's like, what the fuck was that about?
Yeah, exactly.
So they're off to Rochester. Why? Well, because the psychoanalyst who originally psychoanalyzed Dr. Peterson, aka Dr. Brulov, Academy Award nominee for Best Supporting Actor here,
Michael Chekhov.
Yeah, is who she reckons is gonna get to the bottom of Gregory Peck, JB's internal issues, and they're gonna uncover them, and they're gonna unlock that door, and those demons will fly out, or whatever Hitchcock thinks mental health is in the 40s.
Well, he does. JB does remember Rome and fighter pilots. He also remembers that he was in the army. And because this is all coming back to him at once, he lashes out at Constance. So this is kind of their first little rocky moment in the relationship. But a
Yeah.
couple of moments later, that's all forgotten about, and they arrive at Dr. Brulov's office. So yeah, that's quickly swept to the side. This little red flag doesn't really register with Constance because she's just so in love, you know. So yeah, they arrive at Dr. Brulov's house, and Constance tells JB that she's going to tell Brulov that they're married, so that it doesn't really arouse too many suspicions. Um, but as they go in, they realise Brulov isn't there, and there's two men waiting for Brulov, so they kind of exchange pleasantries, and they're just both, everyone's waiting for Brulov to arrive. But as the two men talk to each other, Constance kind of figures out that these two guys are detectives. So she becomes nervous, and she doesn't want to let on that obviously this is the guy that is on the run for murdering a psychoanalyst, and this is obviously she's kind of been helping him according to the papers. So she kind of tries to act as calmly as normally as she can. But then Lieutenant Cooley, who was one of the men, he answers the phone, and he whispers something to the other man. And yeah.
They get up, they chat to Brulov. We get a bit of a back and forth where they want Brulov's expertise on a specific case of tracking someone down, and he keeps saying psychoanalysis isn't as black and white as you think it is. And basically, I think he thinks that they're being maybe too forceful on whoever this person is.
Yeah,
and
that's right,
yeah, he wants to approach these situations with a bit more tenderness, a bit more care. And he basically sends them on their way. He's like, I've told you before, leave me alone.
Yeah.
JB and Peterson have a chat with Brulov. Brulov's very, friendly to them. He's a very nice guy by all intents and purposes. He says, any husband of Peterson's is a husband of mine, which is a pretty funny line. He sends them upstairs. They go upstairs, and again, we have one of those conversations in a bedroom where she's like, I want to psychoanalyze you. And he's like, no, I'm too broken. And she's like, no, I can fix you. Like, just TikTok chat, basically. And then
basically
he sees the white bed sheets with the black pinstripes, and again, he just flips his lid. He faints, has a freaker, and she deduces, all right, you had a freaker when you saw the pinstripes on my white blazer. It's happened again now you've seen these bed sheets. There's clearly something to do with like white with black pinstripes, but I have no idea. That is very vague. So we'll come to that later.
That's when he collapses in it, and then he tries to shave. Yeah. So he tries to shave, and again he's startled by the whites and the patterns, harking back to the couple of instances from earlier, which clearly, for whatever reason, psychologically, the colour of white and these kind of patterns, they startle him for some reason. He doesn't like them too much, so he hovers over Constance's bed with a shaving knife, quite ominously, and we don't know what the fuck is going to happen here. Is he going to attack her? What the hell is going on? But he leaves the room and he walks downstairs, and Brulov, who happens to still be downstairs, he spots JB, and he invites him over for crackers and milk, and he hands him a glass of milk. So there's like a really ominous shot as Hitchcock kind of acts as if JB is going to attack Brulov. Is he going to attack him in the middle of the night? Is he going to murder Brulov like he may or might not have done with the real Dr. Edwards? So the next morning, Constance comes downstairs and she sees Brulov kind of motionless on the chair, and she's been in a bit of a panic. She kind of goes over and she thinks he might be dead, but he's not dead. He wakes up, and he says that JB is asleep. She's in a bit of a freak because she doesn't really know where he is. Has he escaped? Has he ran off? Turns out he's asleep across the room, basically on the sofa, and Brulov says he figured out all along that JB isn't really her husband, and he basically thinks that he likely killed the real Dr. Edwards. He says that he actually put bromide in the milk because he feared for Constance's safety. He thinks of her like a daughter in many ways, or at least very fondly anyway. So he doesn't want.
She's the best assistant he ever had.
Exactly. He thinks very highly of her. So obviously he didn't want JB, whoever this man is, to attack Constance in the way he believes he killed Dr. Edwards. So he put bromide in his milk to knock him out. Says that was enough for several horses, didn't he, if I'm not mistaken? Yeah. So, yeah, put a big old dose of bromide in his milk. So, anyway, Brulov says that Constance's feelings for JB are clouding her judgment, and yeah, he's not too impressed by the fact that she's still trying to help this dude recover his memory and recover who he is.
And yeah, Brulov basically says everything you're doing is based on love. Love isn't reasonable. You can't bet on love to definitely work out for you. You got to be more logical here. This man could kill you in your sleep, and I don't want that to happen. This guy needs to be locked away. And she's like, no, please, just give me a couple of days. You help me psychoanalyze this guy. We'll get to the root of his amnesia. We'll figure out what the issue is, because I'm convinced that he didn't kill Dr. Edwards. And Brulov says, fine. I'll do it only because it's you, but we're gonna get straight into this. I'm gonna psychoanalyze him, and we're gonna psychoanalyze his dreams and dream sequence.
Yeah.
Definitely the best part of the film, as far as visually, narratively. I think it's absolutely amazing. I think Dali's work is brilliant. Again, apparently the vast majority of things that Dali came up with, or what was shot, was cut.
Yeah.
But what we still managed to get is still great.
Sorry, apparently as well, Hitchcock wasn't actually on set for some of the dream sequence. It was the assistant director who shot a lot of that, and the assistant director actually didn't like how it kind of turned out, so he didn't really want to put his name to it. But it turns out that was one of the most famous, maybe the most famous part of the whole film, really. So I wonder if that person regrets that. Yeah, Brulov basically tells JB that the secrets of a person are held in their brains, and he says it's like broken puzzle pieces that you have to put back together. So yeah, that dream sequence is definitely visually by far the best thing of the film. Definitely.
Yeah, and the whole dream sequence itself sort of does explain everything that has happened in his past. You kind of need it explained for you, because ain't no way are you understanding that on a first go, unless you are a professional psychoanalyst, I guess. Basically, what happens at this dream sequence is there's a big gambling hall, and in the background is these curtains that are just eyeballs. That visual is amazing. And in this gambling hall, there's people playing cards, whatever, and there's a guy in the background who is taking a massive scissors and is cutting up these eyes. Maybe an homage to Un Chien Andalou, I'm not sure. Salvador Dali's short film from the 20s, which, if you've not seen it, it's very good. It's a lot. I watched it at a bus stop once, and the guy next to me probably thought I was an absolute freak for watching it without context, but it's a very good short film, and the visuals, yeah. If you've seen that one shot with the yeah, it's a lot. Anyway, he sees a woman dancing in this gambling hall. He says she vaguely looks like Peterson, and she's not wearing a lot of clothes. And at this point, Brulov is like, typical dreams is just showing you everything you want, basically. And he's like, no, there's more. He's playing a game of 21, and he loses to a guy. And the way that shot's very cool, with the camera pushing over this, what seems like a ginormous table. And when we get to the other end of the table with the other guy, we see that the other guy's cards are totally blank. And the proprietor of the gambling hall, who basically just has like a mask for a face, comes in and kicks that guy out and says, you've cheated at 21 again. Get out of my place. Get out of my place. And then this same proprietor is on this massive rooftop. This bit looks so cool as well.
Yeah.
It's like a huge house, and there's a man who falls off the roof of the house. And again, this all makes sense in time, bear with me. And behind, I was going to say behind a tree, but it's meant to be a tree in real life. Behind this chimney, a man emerges. It's the proprietor from earlier with the mask for a face, and he has a proper Salvador Dali looking wheel, which he drops, and it falls, but it doesn't fall off the roof, it stays on the roof. This will all make sense later on. And then these wings start chasing Gregory Peck down this big slope. And that's the dream sequence. Visually, it's incredible, and narratively, all of these things then do make sense when it comes to what actually happened to Edwards and Gregory Peck's character and whoever the proprietor is.
Yeah. So
It might be it might be what's her name? It might be Carmichael for all we know.
yeah, so he wakes up and sees Brulov, and they realize that it's snowing outside. And then when they see the tracks, they realize that this is kind of linking to what he was afraid of. So they realize that it was snowing because it's white, and they realize that there must have been like sled tracks coming back to the dream that he had as well. So for whatever reason, this kind of pattern in the snow, coupled with the pattern in the snow, coupled with the fact that the snow was white, they realized that there was some sort of incident in the snow, and that's kind of the trigger as to what the hell happened to this dude and why he had this kind of psychotic break, if you want to call it that. Why he had this this breakdown. Yeah, in a way. So Constance,
and they realize as well it's something to do with skiing, because is it in Edwards' book that he mentions that he likes skiing, or was it just that Edwards was known for liking skiing? And
yeah, I think
that's how they kind of link snow and tracks to skiing. So we got to go to a ski slope.
Yeah, exactly. And they also know there's a connection between, they figured out earlier in the film that Edwards and JB went to Italy or wanted to go to Italy together. So maybe they went to the Italian mountains. Something to do with that, maybe. So yeah, anyway. So Constance and Dr. Brulov realised that Edwards fell to his death. He remembers the name of the mountain as Gabriel Valley. So Gabriel obviously being a kind of religious name, that comes back again to the religious imagery that we saw in the dream sequence. So yeah, they realised that he must have died in a skiing accident, maybe in Rome, or close to Rome anyway, in the mountains. And Lieutenant Cooley, then we cut back to Lieutenant Cooley from earlier. He gets a photo of Constance, and he realizes that this is the same woman from Dr. Brulov's office. So yeah, he knows that these two people who were in the office, these are the people who were on the run, and one of them is after killing Dr. Edwards and the other one is trying to get away with it. So he believes.
Ski scene. Well, before that, they get a train there, and Peck's character JB just seems to be losing his marbles ever so slightly now. At this point, everything's freaking him out a bit.
Yeah.
And then we get the ski scene, which is shot pretty poorly.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good at
100%.
all. It's one of the worst shot things I've seen in a Hitchcock film. They're so blatantly just stood there in front of a projection, and it looks bad, and it's dated pretty poorly, and the acting is pretty comical because they clearly just think it's stupid as well, but they're just pretending to ski in front of a projector. It looks silly.
In the original, the man who knew too much, I should say, from the 30s, 35 maybe-ish. It's kind of there's a similar ski scene which is also kind of shot poorly at the very start of that film, and yeah, this kind of reminded me a bit of that. But in a way, this is almost worse because Hitchcock has had 10 years in between that film and this to kind of perfect, maybe not the word, but definitely improve upon that, and he didn't really do that at all. So that's it makes it even more disappointing, I would say.
And on this ski slope, again, it looks pretty silly, but as we get down to the bottom of the ski slope, under all this pressure, JB realizes what had happened, why he has this complex, this sort of why he has amnesia. It's not actually linked to Edwards. It's actually ironically quite well shot. Is this then flashback of as he's coming in the ski slope, he remembers he was coming down this like ledge outside of his house when he was a child, and he slips and falls down and accidentally basement drop kicks his brother off the wall, who falls stomach first onto a fence, and it impales him and kills him. That's actually shot like quite memorably, and it's pretty shocking.
It's quite very shocking
because again, we have a child involved there.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to the ski slope where JB stops her from going over the edge of the slope. He remembers everything now, and yeah, this, I don't know, throw them into their trauma therapy worked. That's what we're going to call it, I guess. Throw him on the ski slope that clearly traumatized him and just hope that he remembers. It works. He saves her in her eyes, which is gas because this whole film is actually about her saving him. Anyway, so then they come into their nice warm chalet and he gives us a bit of exposition, a bit of background on his character. His name's John Ballantyne. Edwards was a friend of his. They were both doctors together. There was an accident on the ski slope where Edwards slipped and fell off the ski slope to his death. So in the dream sequence, Edwards was obviously the man who fell off this big, massive house. That was the cliff. But who's the proprietor who was hiding behind the chimney? We don't know yet. He was clearly the man who fell off, and yeah, that's how he died. It was an accident on a ski slope. It's a bit of a silly explanation he gives as well about everything.
Yeah.
It's quite ham-fisted. A lot of this ending is very ham-fisted, I feel. There's one part
He goes from
genuinely just irritated me, but that's a little bit later on.
he goes from knowing nothing about his past and about what happened to all of a sudden he remembers every minute detail. Yeah, that could have been handled a lot better.
Yeah, and the police show up, and she's kind of like, "Oh, not to worry, he's remembered everything. Edwards fell off the slope," and they were like, "Yeah, no, we did. We found his body with a bullet in it." Oh, what? And yes, they take J.B. John Ballantyne away. It is John, isn't it? Yes. They take John Ballantyne Gregory Peck away, and we kind of flash through it where she defends him in court, but no, he gets convicted because he was on the ski slope with him. So he has to have been the guy who shot him. He gets sent to prison. She's fairly traumatized. She's upset. And after all this, she has a conversation with Brulov. Brulov's like, "Oh, you know, you tried your best. It's not your fault," kind of thing. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes.
No, I'm just saying she blames herself, and yeah, even though she's tried to help him throughout the whole film, she still, for some reason, blames herself. Even though he happened way before she even met him. So yeah.
And yeah, Brulov leaves, and Murchison returns, and this bit just irritated me so much. It is the most spoon-feedy ending to a film ever. It is so... How stupid do you think we are sometimes? Like, so Murchison comes up, and at the start of the film, he said, "Oh, when the police are interrogating him, they're like, 'Oh, how did you not know that was not Edwards?' He was like, 'Oh, I never actually met Edwards. I just kind of knew him as an acquaintance, like through his works and stuff.'" Anyway, he comes and they have a chat, and Murchison has his job back, and he says, "Oh, yeah, it's a real shame what happened to Dr. Edwards. He was a good man. I only knew him slightly." Yeah. And then he leaves. And then she walks through her room whilst the film goes, "I only knew him slightly. I only knew him slightly. I knew him. I knew him. Knew. And it's like, okay, we get it. We get it. Yeah. He said he didn't know him, and then he said he did know him. We fucking get it. We get that he's the bad guy. Shut up, Hitchcock. We get it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so fucking forced. It annoyed me so much.
Treats its audience.
Like Salvador Dali. Salvador Dali's putting this much effort in to put this dream sequence together where you have to try and unwind this riddle. And then Hitchcock goes, "No, what we'll actually do is we'll just say it over and over again what the answer is.
We'll just get a frying pan and bash you over the head.
No stone unturned." Yeah.
Fuck you.
No stone can be unturned.
Fuck you.
We're just turning everything over at the end.
Fuck you and your beautiful imagery, Salvador Dali. I'll just get this frying pan and bash everyone over the head with it.
Yeah, what do you mean open to interpretation? There's only one answer, and it's my answer. Fucking pissed me off so much. So yeah, they have their back and forth, go for a chain. How does this film end?
Yeah, so she basically confronts him in his office. She tells him about a dream that John had, and about the dream, basically, the aforementioned dream, the Salvador Dali dream, where he plays cards, And Murchison reckons that the 21 Club in New York is the true locale of the dream. So, yeah, he basically confesses to being the angry proprietor who confronted Edwards, that kind of mythical proprietor, if you want to call it that. Constance says that she hasn't told anyone about the dream, and this is obviously not when Murchison knows he's rumbled. So she says he dropped the revolver in the valley, but he says no, I didn't, because he pulled it out and points it at her. So not the most subtle moment again. Well, I suppose it's dramatic, I suppose, if nothing else. She works out that Murchison killed Edwards by hiding behind a tree and shooting. So didn't obviously plummet to his death off the slope. He was killed and then maybe thrown overboard, maybe, if you want to call it that. She says that surely there's going to be witnesses who saw this thing. But she also tells him that legally he's not going to be held responsible for the murder because he's going to be held. The police are going to think that he basically was insane at the time. He lost his mind, so he'll actually be found innocent, isn't the word, but definitely not liable at least. So he's worried about going to prison for the rest of his life, or even maybe getting a death penalty. She says that that's not going to happen because the way the law is, he's going to be found. And obviously his breakdown was well documented in the first place. That's the whole reason why the real Dr. Edwards wanted, or would have gotten his job in the first place. So she says, look, there's more than enough evidence to show that you weren't in your right mind at the time. So she slowly walks out and hopes that he doesn't run after her and put a bullet in the back of her head. But he doesn't do that. He actually shoots himself. So that's actually I thought it was a cool shot, basically. For all the talk about Hitchcock's direction, he was actually nominated for Best Director, which I thought was a bit crazy, actually. In this, there's plenty of films I could say he should have been nominated for instead. But anyway, for all the talk about that we talked about earlier about how there's some scenes that weren't particularly well directed, I think this is one where he did a good job on Hitchcock because pretty sick shot, I would say.
Yeah, and then after that, everyone lives happily ever after. After this guy shoots himself in the face, everyone lives happily ever after.
John gets out of prison, they get married, and the end, basically.
The end.
Everything wrapped up in a nice little bow.
That's Spellbound. I think Spellbound, for me at least, other than maybe The Birds, but no, I would say Spellbound is comfortably the most overrated Alfred Hitchcock film in his filmography. It's got this aura about it that it's a classic and it's one of the best films in early Hitchcock's canon. It's just not. It really isn't. It's genuinely a fascinating film for the first act, and there's literally moments of greatness and moments of abhorrent laziness just spliced back to back constantly throughout the ending. And then that whole middle part, all I wanted was for the football to start, and it was not on for another 2 hours. So I had to watch Spellbound until it got to the interesting part again, which took about 30 minutes. It's a solid film on average because, as I said, there are moments of absolute greatness in here, and there are moments of just pure, unadulterated laziness as well. It's got one of the best scores for a 40s Hitchcock film. One of the best scores we've had so far. Definitely deserves the credit it gets for its score, and it definitely deserves the credit for what of Salvador Dali's dream sequence we did manage to see, because at least everything that we saw made sense to the narrative. I would be interested to see the 20-minute cut of that dream sequence and how it is somehow linked to the entire narrative, because it does feel like that 2 minutes is quite compact and does all perfectly link into moments in the film. That being said, though, the direction of the film, and it might not have been Hitchcock, it might have been Selznick, who knows, but just the need to explain everything in such unnecessarily ham-fisted detail just made the film, I'm not going to say it felt like it discredited all the good work that was done prior, but it certainly doesn't. I don't know. Spellbound is Spellbound. It'll never be one of my favorite Hitchcock films. No. It'll always be lower tier for me. I've watched it twice now, and I just I'm not a fan of it as a whole. But as I said, there are moments of absolute greatness, sprinkled, and I mean sprinkled, in this film. What do you reckon, Shane?
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind is inessential. Like if you're a Hitchcock completist, like maybe we are, tick it off for sure. But I mean, if you only want to cherry pick certain things for Hitchcock, probably don't go out of your way to watch this. I would say. You would think by 6 Academy Award nominations, obviously one win, Ingrid Bergman on the cast, Gregory Peck in the cast, Leo G. Carroll in the cast. He has all this stuff going for it. Salvador Dali dream sequence, all this great stuff going for it. But yeah, it doesn't really live up to the hype. I was expecting more based on the hype from certain people, and it's also just kind of the, like I said, like I just laid out, the people who were involved. I definitely expected more, to be honest. I really loved the first half an hour. I thought it was building up to a really solid psychological thriller. Yeah, at some point it just lost me, and I don't think it ever really got me back. So I've gone 3 out of 5 stars, and yeah, I think I wouldn't go. I definitely wouldn't even be thinking about going higher than that. Maybe even go half a star lower, depending on my mood. But I don't think I'll ever really be in too much of a mood to go back and rewatch this.
No.
I could be crazy. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, I would say don't go out of your way unless you're a completist.
Yeah, I also gave it 3 stars, but about as low at 3 stars as I can give.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like on average, it is a totally fine film.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's insane to think, given the dream sequence and the opening to the film. It should be so much better than it is. And yeah, that's Spellbound in a nutshell. Next week, we don't know what we're covering yet. It will either be The Seventh Seal or The Ascent. I'm interested to see which one it'll be. I've actually never seen either. I've seen a handful of Bergman films, but not Seventh Seal, so that'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it if it's that. And again, with The Ascent, I can't wait to watch it if it's that as well. I've heard so many good things about that film also. Shane, what do you reckon? What are you hoping it's going to be?
Ingmar Bergman's someone that I haven't managed to tackle so far. I definitely have always wanted to get into his stuff, but I haven't yet. So yeah, if I'm honest, I would love it to be The Seventh Seal, because I've heard a lot of great things, and it'd be a good introduction, I think, to Ingmar Bergman into his filmography. But it's obviously not up to us; it's up to everyone who votes. So whatever you want us to watch, let your voice be heard.
And yeah, that was the Golden Hour Film Podcast, episode 9. Next week, episode 10. That's fucking wild to think. We'll be 10 episodes deep, but here we are. We're still going strong. We're getting a lot of support, which is great. If you want to support us, you know what to do. Like the video, share the video, give us a 5-star review on Spotify. Follow us on TikTok. We're doing okay over there at the minute. Follow us on Instagram if you don't already. If you're listening to us on Spotify, why not subscribe to us on YouTube if you have an account there? Give us a little subscription, and if you're listening away, feel free to watch the video format, or vice versa. If you try and watch the video format but you maybe don't have the time, feel free to listen to the audio format instead on Spotify or Amazon or whatever.
Yeah.
Any support is great support, and we really appreciate all of it. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. I've been Harry Bailey.
I've been Shane Mulvaney.
And goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.